Somebody's always asking somebody else a whole list of questions that they think that the other person can't answer. They always try to be gotcha questions, where if you're going to try to stay consistent within your worldview, you're going to wind up looking stupid here. I remember somebody asking 10, somebody asking 11, somebody asking 36 in like 3 minutes. Like, dude, Dwayne Gish wants his horse back. Stop galloping that shit. But anyway, this time, we have Braxton Hunter asking 10. And he's saying that these are not supposed to be gotcha questions. I've already seen all 10 of them, and as they go, these are less gotcha-y than many. So, here's my response to question 1 of Braxton Hunter's 10 Questions for Atheists. That's the intro. Here's the tunes. Now, Braxton Hunter, he could rightly be called Dr. Hunter. He holds a doctorate in ministry from Luther Rice Seminary, but I've never seen him use that honorific outside of his professional capacity as the president of Trinity Bible College and Seminary. If he finds this inappropriate or offensive and prefers that I use the doctor honorific while addressing him, I have no problem with that, and I'll correct it in future videos. Braxton runs the Trinity radio podcast and YouTube channel. He's written some books on apologetics and other such Christian rah-rah, maintains a strong internet presence, and he engages in the debate circuit. He's rather funny and tends to be one of the more pleasant apologists for an atheist to deal with. So, let's get to his questions.
What facts about reality that you and I agree are real facts about the way the world is does your worldview account for, but my Christianity doesn't account for, or at least doesn't account for well? And for those of you that would point out atheism isn't a worldview, I'm talking about your worldview that includes atheism. I can't think of any. Christianity accounts for evil, suffering, the existence of other religions, including supernatural events in those other religions, science, and differences among different denominations of Christianity.
Well, Braxton, I will agree that these things are real facts about the world, but I wouldn't say that Christianity accounts for them well. To account for something well, the account must have explanatory power, which Christianity lacks. Because it lacks explanatory power, it can account for nothing. The reason Christianity is barred from accounting for anything is its accounts invariably are dependent upon supernature being a valid concept, which no one has shown to be the case. It requires supernatural beings to exist with no human, being natural, could possibly know to be true. It requires these supernatural beings to do things supernaturally and posits that these supernatural events can and do interact with the world, which is not in evidence and borders on incoherence, because if it interacts with the world, it is, at least from the point of interaction, natural.
He's not Nightbreed. He's natural.
Christianity needs divinity to exist when no God is known to do so, and claims for itself all of this understanding about supernature, which by definition it could not possess. Supernature means, quite literally, above nature. We, being natural, have no means to detect it, interact with it, or measure it. Without the means to detect or measure, it's indistinguishable from mystery, the unknown, the non-existent, or the fictitious. When someone tries to account for something, the means they use to do so must be justified. Failing to do this, the account is dismissed until such time as they can justify the means that they use. It's kind of like When an aspiring writer receives a rejection letter from a sympathetic publisher. Now, Braxton, you've published things. Have you ever gotten a rejection letter from a publisher or an agency? They're typically something like, "Thank you for your submission, but we must pass at this time. Please do keep us in mind for future works. Best wishes." It's pretty much like that. Come back and try to account for something when you can account for it without reference to the supernatural, or after you've increased our understanding to the point where we can detect what a current is undetectable. Now, to the things that you mentioned. Evil. Evil is an adjective. It means particularly immoral, sinister, vile. I agree, this adjective, it exists, and that humans label certain things or actions as such. The Christian apologist, however, seems to wish there to be a kind of a noun kind of evil, kind of a dark side of the force, if you will. This is not something with which I'm down. That isn't a fact about the world which we both agree on. Suffering? Well, that's someone or something not getting that which they want or they need. This is in no way unaccounted for in my worldview, and absolutely no challenge to it. I cannot fathom why a Christian would say that the universe, without intelligent direction, which they themselves sometimes mockingly refer to as the atheists' cosmic indifference, doesn't account for suffering. Things won't always work out for every conscious entity. There's no reason for one to expect them to. Religions exist. And the geographic isolation of people, as we spread throughout the globe, as well as our tribalism and tendency to otherize those unknown to us, account for the culture myths of those tribes, including the Christians' preferred culture myths, those of the ancient Jews, and the first century Jewish heretics and early Christians. Adherence to these culture myths is what forms religions. My worldview accounts for these just fine. Supernatural events in those other religions are quite well accounted for in my worldview. My take on supernatural events is this: they are elements of fiction. Invoking the supernatural in a narrative can be an effective literary device for instigating a visceral reaction to a story in the hands of the adept storyteller. Consider not only the supernatural literature of ancient people, but also the supernatural literature of today. The world's best-selling author of all time, Stephen King, is the purveyor of the supernatural tale. The Bible, being ancient supernatural literature, is the best-selling book of all time. Remove the supernatural elements of the Bible, and what do you have? A dry anthology of military battle, tribal and familial strife with questionable genealogy. Without the fictitious supernatural elements, the Holy Bible? It's little more than a big old boring book of begats. People sharing and enjoying the supernatural tale form community around it, as people brought together in shared experiences are wont to do. People like stories that invoke an emotional reaction, be that awe, or fear, or wonder, or triumph. Shared stories, and more importantly, shared emotional reactions to those stories, help form community. And the storytellers in such communities, they have the ear of everyone in it, thus power. Which brings us to science. Christianity is at odds with science. Science has eliminated the impetus of Christianity, of sin possibly being a thing. With this concept debunked, Christianity is superfluous. I find it very odd indeed, Braxton, that you say that Christianity accounts for science. The differences between different denominations of Christianity very easily explained in my worldview. And it kind of goes like this. The supernatural literature at the basis of their religion is in desperate need of an editor. The King James Version of the Bible, and I'm using this because this is the one that I read the most. But King James is over 780,000 words. By way of comparison, your average novel is about 100,000. A massive old Stephen King doorstep like The Stand is like 475 or 500,000. 780,000 words of archaic text by different authors writing in different styles, in different times, in different languages, in different locations, all cobbled together into a single volume by fans of all of these works found therein, rather than a professional editor, makes for a very clunky, difficult, tedious, and exhausting read. Now, if I can illustrate here for a moment, let's consider The Gunslinger by Stephen King. This is the first novel in the Dark Tower series. Many people reading this book for the first time say it reads rather clunky, that the flow is hard to follow, even if it has some really good parts. What they don't know is this book was originally released as a series of novellas printed in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. It took about 3 years, and then after that, Donald M. Grant covered it up in one cover and set it out there. But when you're writing something over 3 years and you're not staying right on it, the author's voice is going to change. See, it wasn't written all in one shot. They're reading it out of context. Their justified criticisms of the novel were absent in the next book in this series, though, The Drawing of the Three, because this was not written as a bunch of related novellas, but rather one cohesive novel. Now, back to the Bible. Between the editorial absence and the sheer length of the anthology, it practically invites people to cherry pick the parts that appeal to them and highlight those while downplaying or ignoring the parts that they find a little more problematic or those that they don't like quite as much. They'll use different tales or different excerpts from those tales to form their own summary narrative of what it all means. The different denominations of Christianity are the result of those different summary narratives. Christianity, on a whole, would be much better served with something like this than like that. I think it's probably a little late now for that type of editorial revision for Christianity. I mean, the last time somebody tried it, it didn't go too well. Looking at you, Mr. Smith. Looking at you.
But I can think of many things that the most common worldviews that include atheism don't answer as well as I think Christianity does. Like universal supernatural claims, universal religious experiences, free will, morality, near-death experiences, beauty, the rapid expansion of the early church, the events surrounding the life and death of Jesus of Nazareth, and our shared longing for purpose and meaning.
Well, do recall, Braxton, that you requested that we talk about things that we both agree are facts. Therefore, I will not reply to universal supernatural claims, universal religious experiences, free will, or our shared longing for purpose and meaning, as I don't find these to be factual statements. This leaves us morality, near-death experiences, beauty, the rapid expansion of the early church, and the events surrounding the life and death of Jesus of Nazareth. Morality is accounted for better in my worldview because it has no appeal to the supernatural whatsoever. It is rooted in empathy, which is advantageous for a social species such as ourselves to possess, and is demonstrated well throughout the animal kingdom. Near-death experiences are explained in my worldview as misfirings of an oxygen and nutrient-deprived brain. We know the brain exists. It's no mystery that it holds no glucose or oxygen stores of its own, that it requires 20% of the body's blood flow, and the chemical components of that blood need to be within a very narrow range for it to properly function. Near death, the blood flow to the organ or the chemical composition of the blood is outside of that range. To expect a brain to properly function in that situation is unreasonable. The experience is remembered while the brain is malfunctioning, or what we refer to as near-death experiences. And beauty, that needs an explanation? It's a subjective opinion of a conscious agent saying, "Ooh, I like that." But that's all. The eye of the beholder and all that. Yeah? I'll be honest, I never understood why Christians in particular use this as an apologetic. It just seems kind of goofy. I think one need not be a Christian to understand the expansion of the early church. It was made the state religion of the superpower of the age, a culture so profound it spawned an entire family of languages in its former holdings. As Rome brought its government, technology, language, economy, and culture to these areas, it also brought along with that its religion. We don't need to turn to supernatural literature to verify this. We have the archaeological record. The events surrounding the life and death of Jesus of Nazareth. I'm not a hardcore mythicist, but I will be honest here. I don't know if Jesus was a real person, nor do I particularly care. But I will grant here, mostly for expediency, that a man called Jesus of Nazareth, if that pleases you, walked around on earth in the first century, and that he died by crucifixion at the hands of Pilate, if that is a requirement, sometime around Passover weekend in the year 30 or 33, 34, however you guys figure out, that is fine by me. There's no problem there whatsoever. Men are born, they live, they die if one were to crucify them. This is all well accounted for in my worldview, as I understand that birth starts the life cycle of the human, and that they will live until they don't anymore for whatever reason. The different Christian narratives surrounding Jesus' death may include one or more of the following, as a means of or contribution to his eventual demise: dehydration, suffocation, heat stroke, exsanguination, and cardiac rupture. All of these kill people. We know that. I have seen each one of these firsthand, multiple times. More times than I care to recall. The supernatural claims about Jesus, such as his virgin birth, divine lineage, yada yada yada, we don't agree that those are facts, so therefore, as per your criteria, they're not going to be discussed here.
So what is it that Christianity doesn't answer as well as your worldview?
Okay. Well, I've already gone and given my bit on Christianity's lack of explanatory power, so really anything that the Christian would be compelled to appeal to the supernatural or divinity would qualify here. Because as soon as they invoke the supernatural or the divine, they forfeit the authority to call that an explanation. I think Braxton, in posting this video today, would agree without hesitation that the universe exists, and that in this universe there is a star in one of the spiral arms of the Milky Way that is our sun. And on the third planet from that sun, you will find a great deal of matter and an amazing diversity of life, including us. I think Braxton would agree that gravity is a thing, a natural law, a fundamental force of the universe. I think he would likely agree that it is due to gravity that planets and other celestial bodies of sufficient mass form spheres. I don't think he's a flat earther. I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am. I think Braxton would agree that there are elements that form the basis of all matter, that no aspect of the periodic table is in dispute. I recall no apologist ever, trying to dispute the theory of oxygen or attempt to counter the fields of chemistry or spectroscopy. I don't think he's going to be the first one in recent memory, at least, to go there. My worldview accounts for all of these in natural means. I grant, a better explanation may be available and unknown to me, or beyond my current ability to comprehend due to a lack of education or maybe faulty mental acuities. But if so, the superior explanation will still account for these by natural means. Unnatural or supernatural means are always inferior. Until such time as supernature is shown to be valid, an explanation that appeals to it is dismissed upon utterance. Big Bang cosmology accounts for the expansion of the early universe and the formation of hydrogen in its various isotopes. My worldview accounts for the formation of the celestial bodies due to gravity, the formation of elements heavier than hydrogen in stellar fusion, and supernova events, as confirmed by spectroscopy. The diversity of life is clearly explained through the irrefutable fact of evolution. Christianity fails to account for any of these facts well, referring to the unjustified, undiscovered, undetectable, or impossible. God did it, is not, has not been, and for the foreseeable future will not be an explanation until the problem of supernature is overcome. And so there's no confusion here or throughout the rest of this series. When I say God or Christian God, I'm using the definition most often given to me by Christians when I ask them what they mean by God. And they say overwhelmingly, the God of the Bible. If you have a different understanding of the divine, Braxton, that's fine. That's totally cool. But you're kind of leaving me to guess here. If I've guessed incorrectly, you never stated it, and the format really didn't lend itself to clarification prior to the questions being asked. It's an assumption that I made. I grant that. But you made a couple of assumptions yourself throughout the course of this video, so if some of your questions don't really target me, I'll let you know, but I'll still give you my answer as to what you said. Does that work? I think that works. However one wishes to define their understanding of Christian divinity, no one saying the Christian God did something can show the divine entity they wish to pin it on as being existent, or even show that divinity of any type is part of reality, much less the cause of anything. As close as they ever get is enough information to make an argument from ignorance, saying, what else could it be, if not my understanding of God? Now, such rhetoric may resonate with those familiar with the stories to which the apologist appeals because of their shared emotional connection to them. But that's it. As the culture myths of the ancient Jews failed to reject the supernatural as an explanation, they aren't taken as a meaningful guide to the world or its origins for anyone outside that particular set of religions. Now, that was a lot for one question. They're not all going to be that long. The next video in this series, I'm going to tackle questions number 2, 3, and 4. We'll take a break there, and then we'll get to 5, because 5, That one's going to be a doozy. Anyways, thank you guys so much for sticking around. It is great having you here. We recently got to 250 subscribers on this channel, and in the grand scheme of YouTube things, that doesn't seem a whole lot, but that's more than we've ever had. So, sincerely, thank you. You guys are awesome. Anyways, this is the part of the episode where you do the YouTubey things. You like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, get the notifications, because that's when you're going to know the next one in the series comes out. Leave us a comment down below, and until next time, you take it easy. You want the tunes? All right, you can have the tunes.